Great. Hello, everybody. I can see that participants are joining us very rapidly. We're hoping to have somewhere between 50 and 70 today. So I'm just going to pause for a minute whilst everybody joins and gets settled down. Right, well, that flurry of participants number now seems to be slowing down. So I think we'll make a start. So good afternoon. My name is Bev Hurley. I am the chair of the Institute of Economic Development. And this is one of our CPD sessions broadly linked to our work in social value in the construction sector. For those of you that are members, you'll see we have quite a lot of events and webinars going on. And so we're really delighted to welcome you today. We've got a great panel. I think it's going to be a really interesting session, finishing at 3 o'clock. So my job is to introduce our main speaker, James Gore, followed by the panelists who will do a short introduction to themselves and their sort of perspectives on this matter. And then we will open the floor for debate, which is always the best part. So can I please encourage you to put your questions in the Q&A section, and I will do my best to get through as many of them as we possibly can. If we don't get through them all, then we will circulate any remaining questions to our panelists to get their input and send a little note out as well so that you can see what their views are on the unanswered questions. We are recording the session as well, and so you'll be able to access that if you have to leave. So without further ado, I'm absolutely delighted to welcome James, who is the Director for Economic Development at Copper Consultancy. Despite his youthful looks, he's got more than 25 years experience in stakeholder engagement and communications, having worked in consultancy and in-house roles across a number of industries. Prior to joining Copper, he was head of government and stakeholder relations at Bristol Airport, where he led that whole consultation and engagement exercise to help get the planning approval across the line. And he heads up Copper's economic development practice. They provide stakeholder engagement and communication support to projects which are aimed at increasing prosperity and quality of life in our towns, cities and regions. As you all know, that's a subject very close to my heart. So their clients include combined authorities, subnational transport bodies, local councils, CLG's Towns Fund, for which James is a service lead, for stakeholder engagement in a consortia of specialist consultants supporting the 101 towns bidding for that all-important investment. So James commissioned Copper's latest research on public attitudes to economic development and authored the report on the findings, which we're going to get a digest of now. This forms part of Copper's growing library of attitudes research, all sorts of really fascinating reports there on things like net zero, urban transport and housing. So I would warmly endorse you taking a look at some of those publications because they're really interesting. So James, thank you very much for agreeing to kick off this session today. I'd like to hand over to you to share your slides and really look forward to hearing what you have to say.
Thank you, Bev, for those very kind words of introduction. Hopefully you can all see my screen now. Don't worry, this isn't going to be death by PowerPoint. I'm very conscious we've got a very interesting and experienced panel with us today. So I'll keep this brief. As Bev said, I'll give you a headline overview of the findings from our most recent research, and then we can hopefully maximise the time that we have for discussion and questions. So, as I say, thanks for the introduction, and thanks to the IED for partnering with Copper to put on this webinar today on public attitudes to economic development. I'm really looking forward to hearing from the panel and the audience today about investment and regeneration plans around the country, and how some of the themes that we've identified are relevant, hopefully, to projects that are being progressed across the UK. It'll be really interesting, I think, to hear whether there are commonalities between the towns and cities and regions that we've got represented on the panel, and also to see if there's the perspectives between the public and the private sector representatives are different, or again, whether there's common themes. So, as I say, to help get the discussion going, I just wanted to share some headline findings from COPPA's most recent research, which I think will provide us with some really interesting talking points that should certainly keep us occupied for the next 50 minutes or so. So just a bit of background, as Bev said, at COPPA, we've been polling the public on matters relating to infrastructure and development since around 2015. So we've got a back catalogue, if you like, of reports going back 5 or 6 years on topics ranging from net zero to the impact of Brexit. The full back catalogue's available on the COPPA website, and I think taken together, what all of these reports give us is a really valuable bank of intelligence on what the UK public thinks about investment in infrastructure in the widest sense. One of the reasons that we carry on this research, and we've kept with it over that period, is that we find it's a really effective way to test and challenge our own assumptions. So working on the inside of projects, I think there's a risk that we become somewhat institutionalized, assuming everyone understands and buys into the benefits of what we're doing. Taking a step back, stepping outside that bubble can give us all a very welcome reality check, and I think the public attitudes research that we do does just that. However, while we try to approach the research with an open mind, we do, of course, start with a set of themes and assumptions that we want to explore and test with the public. And in this latest report, we set out to discover, first of all, whether the public are aware of, and then secondly, playing an active role in shaping the future vision for the places where they live and work and play. We wanted to understand whether there are barriers to engagement which prevent people from getting involved. And if there are barriers, how can we, those of us working in economic development, how can we encourage others to join in the conversation? We also look to test the public's awareness of existing investment in towns and cities, and to see what their expectations were in terms of when they'd see the benefits from projects. We tried to establish the public's priorities for investment, and again, this is where that back catalogue comes in, because this is something that we've revisited several times now, so we're able to track changing priorities. And this time it was particularly interesting because obviously we've had the pandemic, and it was interesting to see whether COVID-19 had changed the public's priorities in terms of where they wanted to see investment. And we tested understanding in a couple of ways. First of all, we wanted to just explore whether the public understood the intent of levelling up. Obviously, it's one of the buzz phrases of the last 12 to 18 months or more, but we wanted to know whether it what it meant for the public, whether it meant anything, and did it mean different things to different people. And secondly, in terms of understanding, we wanted to see whether people thought that the government at different levels understood their local challenges on the ground. And finally, we wanted to know which organisations the public look to for investment in places. So, who does the public think has responsibility and a role to play in investing in the future of the places where they live? So that's what we set out to find out. What did the public tell us? The first thing they told us was that awareness of plans and visions and strategies for places is quite low. Only just over a quarter of the people that we spoke to said they were aware of any sort of plan for the future of the place where they live. And awareness of existing investment was also low. Those that were aware of investment expected to see results quickly. I'll come back to this shortly, but I think it suggests there's a job to do for all of us in terms of expectation management. People are expecting to see positive outcomes quickly when they hear about investment in projects in their locality. So managing those expectations is obviously going to be key for all of us to avoid disappointment. And while people said COVID had changed their views, we actually found that in terms of the order of priority for the type of investment they wanted to see, views had remained relatively consistent when compared to our previous research. So things like housing, renewable energy, waste and recycling were still deemed the most important in terms of investment priorities for the public. COVID has, I guess not surprisingly, made people more pessimistic about the prospect of investment in these priorities making a positive difference in their lives. So again, that's a challenge that all of us might need to address as we move forward. But more encouragingly, 3/4 of the people that we surveyed said that they could be encouraged to get involved in being part of the conversation about the future of their place, but they wanted to do so on their own terms. And I'll come back to that a little bit more in a moment, but I think it was really interesting as a lesson to us all that it's about engaging with people where and when they want to engage rather than when suits us or how we've done things before. So I think in many ways COVID has sort of accelerated the uptake right across society, not just in business, of digital tools like the one we're using today. So I think that provides us all with an opportunity to engage in different ways moving forward. And finally, in terms of findings, not surprisingly, again, we found that levelling up means lots of different things to different people. And I think for that reason, it makes it particularly challenging to measure success. So again, that was an interesting finding. Diving into the results on engagement, because at COPPA, that's what we're very focused on, in a little bit more detail. I think this slide on the face of it is disappointing. The majority of people say they played no part in shaping future plans. Worse still, most weren't even aware there was a plan. So, you could take that as a bit of negative feedback for our sector and the industry as a whole. But actually, I'd rather look at it as a real opportunity for all of us to bring more people into the process of shaping the future of places. And to that point, when we probed a little bit more about whether what people wanted to be more involved, well, there was still a kind of hardcore quarter or so of people who said nothing you can do would persuade me to spend my time taking part in this sort of future vision planning. Most people, reassuringly, said that they would like to be involved. And the majority actually said they'd like to be slightly involved, which I thought was an interesting choice. But I think what that says to me is people are busy. We've all got lots of pressures in our lives at the moment in particular, and people want to be able to engage on their own terms. So it's imperative on us to find ways and design ways that people can kind of dip in and effectively do some light touch engagement if that's what they want to do. So moving on to priorities. The public prioritised investment in housing above all other options, and I don't think that's, again, surprising given the scale of the housing challenge that we have in the UK. But also there was some very clear support for renewable energy projects, waste and recycling facilities, and that reinforced findings from our previous research into net zero, which found that projects responding to the climate emergency do resonate with the public. So I think that's a positive piece of feedback for us all to take away. The support for investment in housing, renewables and recycling, as I say, remained relatively unchanged by coronavirus. So the research we've done either side of last spring when obviously lockdown came in for the first time, the numbers haven't changed too much, with two exceptions. Road and rail were noticeably lower on the public's list of priorities this side of COVID. So again, I think we can all probably see that that's likely to be due to the changes that have taken place in the way that people are working and travelling since the introduction of lockdowns, and perhaps suggesting that some of the changes to the way that we work may be more permanent. But it'll be interesting to monitor, and we'll certainly be asking this question again. I think it'll be interesting to monitor whether those changes or whether those results change as restrictions are eased in the coming weeks and months. So our research suggests that the public have some very clear ideas about what they want to see investment in, but it also makes clear that the public don't necessarily believe that central government alone holds the answer to levelling up. There were varying views on whether local challenges are well understood at government level. And interestingly, the findings weren't consistent across the UK. So for example, 30% of the people that we spoke to in the South East said, yes, the government understands, my local challenges. That fell to fewer than 20% when we asked people in the Northwest. So again, some regional disparities in people's view of whether government understands the challenges they face. So despite some skepticism over central government's understanding of the local context by the public, it's interesting to see that they still see government as a very important source of funding. In fact, it's only second only to the to local authorities in the pie chart that you can see there, and it's ahead of the private sector in terms of where the public expect to see investment coming from. And I think to me that suggests that partnership working between national and local and regional government, public and private sector, will actually be very positively received by the public. And the model of taking local expertise and using that to direct and deliver investment that might be part funded from the centre is something that the public may, may look positively upon. So finally, turning to recommendations, and I appreciate I've rattled through quite a lot of data here, and for those that want to go and dig into this into detail, the report's on the website, as I said earlier, but just to leave fellow panel members and audience members joining us today with 5 thoughts, which hopefully might spark conversation and questions. 5 recommendations from Copper as to how we think we should be engaging with the public as we all seek to deliver development and regeneration projects around the country. First of all, we need to move away from a one-size-fits-all approach to consultation and engagement, and we need to look more to tailored options which enable local people to engage on their own terms, as I said earlier, in the time they're willing to spare for the task. So that point about people wanting to be slightly engaged is key here, and I think we need to find kind of right-sized solutions and ways of engaging for people that work for them. Secondly, I think there's a real opportunity for us to be positive about the benefits of our projects, and that taps into what we've seen consistently as clear public support, particularly for investment in things like housing, renewable energy, waste recycling. And because we can see that that support is there, I think we should be more proactive in encouraging local people to be advocates for our projects and plans that meet those requirements. And building on that, I think we should continue to look to build coalitions of partners across central, regional, local government levels and the private sector, not just to maximise the funding that's available, but also because I think the results of this survey show us that the public sees all of those organisations as having a role in delivering investment in their communities to create positive outcomes. So I think that's a key message that I've taken from the research. Linked to that, I think it's really important that we maintain channels of communication right throughout development and delivery, from the vision stage through to delivery of projects. And that's partly to good practice in demonstrating progress towards the shared goals that we've agreed upon. But I think it's also important in helping to manage expectations, and to the point that I made earlier about the rather fast turnarounds that people expect to see once they're aware of investment plans. So managing those expectations with a regular flow of communications is key. And finally, we need to make better use of digital tools. So we're all here on Zoom talking to each other in a way that we probably wouldn't have been as familiar with 18 months ago. And I think there's more that we can do as a sector, and certainly as stakeholder engagement specialists at Copper. It's something we're doing more and more. But I think using digital alongside traditional face-to-face engagement is important. It's, as I said earlier, it's certainly not a one-size-fits-all solution here. So a mix of the traditional and the digital, I think, is important in making sure we can bring everyone into the conversation and break down some of those barriers that clearly still exist in getting the public involved in some of these questions that we're all looking at. So that's a very quick overview of our findings on public attitudes. I think by being aware of some of those challenges and opportunities, I hope we can help shape plans which are more likely to have community buy-in in the long run and genuinely meet local needs and the needs of people across the country. So on that note, Bev, I'll hand back to you to pick up on any or all of those points with the rest of the panel, and I hope that's provided us with some good good food for thought to get our teeth into over the next 50 minutes or so. Thanks.
Thank you very much, James. We've already got the first couple of questions in the Q&A, which is super. And I've got about 4 that I'd like to ask you, but I'll put myself at the end of the list. So yeah, some really interesting stuff in there. I'd like now then to call on our panelists from Great Yarmouth Borough Council for a view from the towns in the east. That's Michelle Burdett, who is Head of Inward Investment at Great Yarmouth. She has the wider regeneration economic growth piece, including business support and recovery work. So she's obviously been a busy lady. And Claire has been doing lots of work on tourism and events ready, as Michelle says, to get ready for when the economy uncoils like a spring. So Claire's role is Head of Comms and Marketing. Obviously, what James has just said feeds greatly into her role. She works very closely with the Inward Investment team and is the lead on community engagement for large investment projects like the new leisure centre and the development of the marketplace in Great Yarmouth. So really interested to have your perspectives on this matter. Michelle, if I can start with you and then you'll hand over to Claire.
Yes, that's right. Claire's going to be sharing the slides because she'll finish off with a short video. So thank you for that, Bev. Wonderful presentation. Thanks, James. I'm hoping we'll be able to keep this fairly swift, 5 minutes between the pair of us. I'm just going to do an overview in terms of the vision. And this is why Claire and I work so well together, because we collectively bring the vision together and we ensure that feedback loop with the community continuously makes the vision a reality. And where it might not work, we might make some changes to adapt to that as we go on. So in terms of the first slide, this is just an overview of what we're going to discuss. Not everyone will know who Great Yarmouth is in terms of a borough council, but also where we're located and predominantly what our issues are. And they are sadly extensive, only exacerbated even more so given the COVID pandemic. We then will go over a little bit about how we built the strategy and how we created the vision, importantly focusing on the town deal, although we are still working up the final changes to our future High Street Fund programme, and there's a lot of interventions that are going on alongside all of that as well. And then Claire will pick up a bit more around how we ensured our stakeholders were front and centre of all of that and how we're continuing to gather feedback as we deliver those schemes out. So here's Great Yarmouth. We're right on the far east coast of the UK in Norfolk. We have a huge amount to offer, and not least one of the biggest seaside resorts, the third in the UK. We take in around, prior to the pandemic, £635 million per annum from our visitors. We have 1 million stay overnight, 4 million day trippers. We also have one of the biggest energy sectors, and offshore wind is a primary focus for us. And interestingly, a huge heritage angle, some key trading links, Victorian and Georgian buildings, some of which that are not in a great state of repair. But all of those things combined show that we've got quite a lot to offer. The downside is we are unfortunately very isolated, huge amounts of deprivation, not unlike many coastal areas around the rest of the country. But we are really focused on some of the nuances of our area based on deprivation, poverty, sadly some of the highest mortality rates in the county, and actually some of our wards are one of the top 10% deprived nationally across the UK. So with that in mind, if we think about the town deal, I won't rehearse all of that because I'm sure you're very familiar, but thinking about those balance between what's the need against what our opportunities are, the town deal for us was almost like a golden ticket. It defines everything that we need to determine as catalysts for change for the borough. So we've been chosen as one of the 101 places, and I'm pleased to see James is a key focus in respect of that service support. But what we've been doing is working up with our stakeholders, our partners, the community, and other funders to ensure that what we're bringing together answers both the need that we've identified specifically down to the actual statistics that we need to justify the intervention, but also the opportunity that we know we have here as part of our economic makeup. We built that around our 27 2019 master plan that has become the framework for what we've determined from our town centre. It was a big piece of work, huge amount of engagement. And I think given that we keep going back to that particular master plan for both the Future High Street Fund and the Town Deal is testament to the work that went into that, and the way in which that puzzle piece will really be the foundation of the Town Deal as we go on. We've had to be flexible and adaptable. And in terms of the image that you're seeing on the screen, you can see how we've brought those key elements together. So at the very top, we've got community engagement, actually going out to individuals, residents, and so on. And then we've got the gathering, synthesis, and analysis of evidence and data. And it's interesting, James, right? I did scribble down, you talked about the coalition of partners justifying what the benefits are. We've done that with our Town Deal board. The people around the table are our ambassadors. They are the people who have the skills and expertise to determine what we're trying to achieve in those 4 pillars that you see on the screen. I won't go into each of those in any detail because I'm really conscious we don't have a huge amount of time, but we've picked out key projects, both capital and revenue, in each of those to deliver efforts in energy, so developing an offshore renewable maintenance centre, key account management with businesses, making sure that they are handheld throughout both this pandemic and as we go forward, a university learning hub in the town centre, the redevelopment of a dilapidated iron structure, Winter Gardens, which is part of this bid, as well as the National Lottery Heritage Fund bid, and digital connectivity, because of the isolation that our people face, not just in terms of infrastructure on the ground, but in terms of digital exclusion. We felt that that was a critical part to this puzzle. And I think at that point, I will pass to Claire. Just wanted to touch on this particular vision. This is our vision that we put in the Town Deal. And you can see here that it focuses on energy, culture, assets, heritage, and attractions. But fundamentally, we're working collaboratively and collectively, having that feedback loop as we work with our Town Deal board to ensure that we can actually realise the aspirations that we've put into place. And now I pass to Claire, I believe.
Okay, so thanks, Michelle. So clearly, once we've set that vision, it's really important for us to engage with our local community and stakeholders. And we did that in various ways. The government encouraged all of the districts who were applying for the Town Deal funding to use the hashtag #MyTown asset, and we did do that, but that's not usually how you would engage on a vision. So it was a bit difficult, and at first we weren't getting a lot of responses. So in order to make that a little bit more successful, we looked at a strategy to support that, and also to do some more communications over different channels and media, keeping it snappy and making sure that the message was really clear and concise, so that we got as much engagement as we possibly could. So in terms of trying to engage, we ensured that, first of all, our Town Deal board membership was really diverse. So you'll have seen through the key themes, it goes through arts and culture, energy, business, and education. So we made sure that our town board consisted of members that spanned those particular sectors and industries. We had a challenge with engagement due to COVID-19. We went through all the previous engagement and consultations that we'd done for different projects, including, for example, the Marina Centre, which is it's a fitness and sports centre, but it's also a tourist attraction. So it's a really interesting project in terms of its place in the community. So we use the MyTown platform, but we also created some social media campaigns to support that, to try and get as many responses as we possibly could. And we ended up with 118 responses through MyTown. So in addition to that, we created an engagement survey, which I'm sure many other councils have done, but we couldn't do the traditional sitting in libraries or in the Marina Centre or the town hall and engaging physically with plans and being able to really discuss. So we had to really think about the tone and the language of the survey, because when we first wrote it, it was a bit bland and it didn't really make anyone want to fill it in. So we looked back to our culture, heritage and tourism strategy, and one of our ambitions is to become the capital of circus. So we used that theme, our place is your stage, and created some campaigns to support that, really use that language. How would you invest in our place? and help us create our stage and our platform. And that went down really well. And we managed to get 387 responses. And when we'd previously created surveys, which were both online and physical, the most responses we got were 294. So we were pleased with the engagement there. So you can see the success rate there. We didn't just do an online survey, as James mentioned. Digital is really important, but we do have those that we can't engage with on that way. So we did have physical paper where the community would gather, but we also held some Zoom sessions with different stakeholders, business and education, which were really quite interesting because we learned that young people didn't really understand the energy sector and the opportunities that it provided. They felt it was just engineering and just for boys. So that really kind of opened up another piece of engagement that we need to do with our energy sector and our young people in order to move forward. We created a brochure, as many other districts did, also a website. But for those who think did more visually than written, we decided to create a video. And I'll just play that for you now. You can see there we've got Jack J from the Hippodrome Circus. He's a bit of a local celebrity, so we felt he would really engage with the community. So I'll play that for you now.
I think we're having a bit of trouble with the sound there, Claire.
Can you hear it at all?
I can't know, just really faintly, and my volume is turned up full screen. That's better. Can you turn it up, Max? I think as we're going to be circulating, we can circulate the slides, and then that might be best to skip over this.
Okay, no problem. Yep, that's fine. And that's the end of our presentation. So it's any questions?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was the last slide. It's really
apologies. We tested it on Teams, not Zoom. That was our mistake.
Okay, no problem. And it's really interesting seeing the questions come in, some of which you've touched on. So I've already got my first questions to put to the panel, but we have two more panelists to speak now. So thank you, Claire and Michelle. I'd like to welcome Liam Davis next, who's Head of City Development at Wolverhampton Council. So we're going from the towns to the cities. Like James, he's an old hand, if I can use that phrase, complimentary. 18 years experience in public and private sector. His specialty is large scale growth and regeneration projects and partnerships. When he was in a previous role at the West Midlands Combined Authority, Liam led the Paradise Circus redevelopment and New Street Station. So I'm surprised he's not fully grey or bald. And interestingly, the Grand Central Shopping Centre that replaced the old Palisades, for anybody that knows Birmingham, was sold for 340 million and won the National RICS Project of the Year in 2016. So congratulations to that. Now, I understand that MHCLG are proposing moving their offices to Wolverhampton, Liam. So I don't know if that's going to be your next project. I wonder how those sorts of, headline grabbing announcements help to attract interest and build momentum in what's going on in the city. So really keen to hear your views. Over to you.
Thank you, Bev. And I'm on my own today, so if I have any technical difficulties, I'm just going to have to take full responsibility for that, unfortunately. And yeah, thank you for the introduction. Number of projects I've been fortunate to be involved with, and I've been dining out on them ever since, and hopefully to dine out on a number more, because we've got a really exciting regeneration programme in Wolverhampton, not least the opportunity now to really maximise the benefit of a significant government department relocating to our city, and not just a few numbers there, really actually a real presence from the ministers. So yeah, I mean, today I wanted to sort of go through and the really important theme for us at the City of Wolverhampton, and that's our relighting our city, and that's our reset, recover and relight coming out of COVID, and how that marries with our regeneration programme. Now, this is the sort of epitomises really our engagement with our residents, our young people, our diverse community, and it's crucial that we've that we have a plan coming out of COVID, but also it aligns to our investment programme, which is paralleled with our Towns Fund board, which I'll touch on in detail, but also our Future High Streets Fund, which we've been successful in helping to really shape and influence change in our city. So part of the Relight Our City comes from our motto, out of darkness cometh light. It's never been more relevant. We've been really hard hit by the pandemic, but we are a really bold and ambitious city, and we're going to be resetting, recover and relighting our city. And the recent news with MHCLG, but also other funding streams, to be honest, is part of our journey as a number of our projects have been in train for many years. So we've got a few themes that we've adopted here in regards to how we're going to address our city, and it links with our new council vision plan. So we're a city that don't leave people behind. So we support those who need us most, and that was really demonstrated through the first lockdowns, where we were really supporting our residents, whether it's food packages, support plans, the testing, and as you know, we had very high spikes with the COVID. But actually, we're coming out of it, and obviously in line with government vaccination policies. We're really optimistic in the programme coming forward. Creating more opportunities for our young people, absolutely really important. We do have levels of deprivation. Colleagues at Great Yarmouth obviously have similar challenges, but we've got to think about the youth coming forward. And it's always a perception of the residents to see that councils are going up their own policies. We've been talking to the young people, we've been responding to the young people, and out of that, clearly there's a need to generate more jobs and learning opportunities and retraining. So within that, growing our vital local businesses, it's about job retention as well. It's not just about business growth. We've got to help our businesses develop and flourish. And also, we've got to maintain our high streets. We want to have vibrant high streets. Now, we know there's a change. There's an absolute mindset and change in retail. And how do we shape our city, and how do we create that vibrancy going forward? So supporting people who need us most. As I say, we've come together in a really incredible way. We've been delivering meals, emotional support, really looking after our city. And, as I say, we don't leave anybody behind here. So the response really has helped shape us going forward. We've engaged, and we've used all sorts of channels to do that, through our engagement with the young people and various groups there, but also different parts of the community, religious parts of the community, the LGBT area, the BAME area. So we want to make sure that we're speaking to everybody and using different forums. Now, we're very good at engaging that, but obviously in this current environment, we've had to sort of now adopt a lot more technical information. And I've been working at Wolverhampton City Council for 11 months, and I haven't even been in the office apart from once. So it just shows you that actually we can continue and deliver our objectives in a remote fashion. And actually we've been thriving through that, through successful Future High Streets Fund award, but also we're going to be getting an announcement imminently, Cal surprise, just by the budget on March the 3rd, on our Towns Fund deal. So we fed back there, and the feedback was quite clear. We want support for the voluntary and community sector. We absolutely aware that mental health and well-being is very important, and that's one thing that we talk about with the community. But do you know what? We talked about it ourselves as officers, with councillors, but with other groups we're working with. So we're absolutely key on that. And then obviously keeping our vulnerable people safe and building community resilience. So I mean, I will share this, by the way, onto the forum. So happy to make this available later. So creating more opportunities for young people. Again, challenging times. We've got our hashtag Yes Youth Engagement Strategy, which obviously we do for our online portals. But it's really just to make sure that there's jobs and opportunities and trainings. And as I say, there's a level of deprivation within our city. We want to make sure that actually everybody has the same chance in life. So we've tackled the issues that we've come back to us. We want to have the opinions heard, and it links really closely to what James was saying in his presentation. More and better opportunities and good education to fulfil potential. So to support our social, emotional health and well-being. So we're invested up to £2.5 million to create those opportunities for investment, and £1 million on new youth engagement workers to go out into the communities and connect. So we're using the portals, you know, TikTok. I mean, I don't know what that is, frankly. I've only just got used to Twitter, but hashtag Generation Wolves. And we're investing another £200,000 this year just to safeguard our youth zone and the way. And we want to make sure that those sorts of forums and opportunities and services aren't removed, and we actually, if anything, investing more. Generating more jobs and learning opportunities, well, absolutely. And as part of the MHCLG, Bev, which you referred to there, what a great opportunity for our city, working with colleges, education establishments to actually benefit there. It's not just about getting ministers and MHCLG in our city. It's about the skills. It's about those new training, the whole civil service training package that actually will give opportunities for people and young people now to actually aspire to careers working in their own city, and the wider clustering of businesses that will support that. So, you know, it is great news, and we're absolutely delighted that there's going to be transformational and commercial development that comes from MHCLG's relocation. But you know what? I think it's more important that actually we look at the future generations and the skill sets that will come forward. So again, we've looked at what are the issues that matter, and the feedback loop is very strong. Again, look at investment in jobs and skills should be the #1 priority for the council. Okay, now we've got a very ambitious regen program, but at the very heart of that, it is always focused on how do we look at supply chains, both locally, the support, the apprenticeships. So we've got a very successful Wolves at Work employment program, which has helped over 5,000 people into work in the last 3 years. Wolves Workbox, our bespoke one-stop digital hub, provides access to training. And as part of our Black Country colleagues, we were in the Black Country Impact Programme that supported over 15,000 school and college students with careers and advice. So it's about creating those environments for good quality and advice and support. But again, you know, I'm a lot more conscious of that, and even my 6-year-old is even starting to talk about the green future. So a lot of that is about maximising the future green economy. I've talked about growing our vital local businesses. We've got some great employers in our city, Jaguar Land Rover, Moog, Marston's, big names, but it's actually the smaller businesses that we want to help thrive and flourish going forward. So a key part of that will be ensuring that we support those through grants and through, obviously, for the COVID situation, to make sure that we don't let some of our businesses go by the wayside. We want them to stay there and to flourish and support. So again, feedback loop is to look at investing local, look at to adapt into changing consuming trends, and as I've referenced already, making sure we've got a supply chain readiness. So very, very important in the current time. I've touched on vibrant high streets and communities previously at the preface there, but very key to our future High Street Fund bid and Towns Fund bid. We're in a changing landscape in high streets and retail. Everyone knows, and no doubt everyone's shopping differently. We're working with key stakeholders to look at repurposing centres, whether it be large stakeholders in shopping centres looking at creating community hub environments, looking at opportunities to explore change of use in terms of the thriving student economy we've got, or actually, more importantly, the creating places to live in our centres that have an opportunity for people to sort of have vibrant and attractive places to live, work, and play. So we've had feedback loop about what brings people into the city centre, and it is leisure. And obviously, we're in a moment in time now where we can't do much, but we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And leisure uses are absolutely key, but also that environment. We've been looking at how people use the environment and our parks, our canals, and those are places and the green spaces. So we've got a program investing in transport, our cycle lanes, looking at support for our existing retailers, as I alluded to, and how we change those, but really thinking about our visitor economy. And recently we're very pleased, and we will, obviously this will be out in the press soon, but we have shortlisted and will be concluding our operator for the Civic Halls, which is a 7,000-seater concert venue, and they're a world leader in the marketplace, and there's some really exciting plans that's going to come from that. So the wider benefits of the Civic Halls is allowed for the nighttime economy, and it's a big passion of mine to bring back that nighttime economy and leisure uses, so the city has an opportunity to bring people in to live, but also to have that wider benefits to the nighttime economy, restaurants, bars, but also opportunities to explore the leisure uses, which of hotels, and building upon our Premier League football status at the Wolves, which is really important to generate that spend and expenditure. So really, next steps, what we're trying to do as a city, obviously we're utilising our Townsend board, like colleagues in Great Yarmouth. It's really important that the residents see it's a board. It's not the council making these decisions. It's key stakeholders in our city, and the board make the decision on the projects. And we have 11 projects that we put forward to government, which address all of these themes. And I probably can go into some of those if we go into our Q&A. What is it we ask of our city partners, and a lot of those are represented at Townsend board, but also how do we work with people? We want to work with the council and our stakeholders to design innovative solutions to address some of these challenges. We want to hear as widely as possible the views of the community, and I think that's a key point which we picked up from, and I certainly did from James's presentation there. And that keys into robust evidence and data. It's really important that it's not just the council making these decisions. It's got to be community decisions that inform our regen programs, because it's the success of generations. It's the people who live there. And as I say, we want people to live and be proud of their city. They are, but we've got lots on the horizon. We want people to be involved in that, and the youth coming forward. And again, I look at how we can support our community as part of our Relight, Recover and Reset. So just to finally to finish on, so a lot of the work we've done over the last 10, 15 years is the foundations of our city. As a council, we're fortunate to own a lot of key land sites which help us enable regeneration. Some of those may be future office environments, but also they will be residential and places to live in the future, like our Canal Side South scheme, which will be launching this year, delivering over 1,200 units. But our interchange site, which is the West Midlands Regen Project of the Year, it's a huge investment, £150 million transport project that links the great city of Wolverhampton with the wider West Midlands, connecting to the north, the south, and obviously the link straight through to HS2, which will get you into London from Wolverhampton within the hour. I-54 Western Extension is also key, and I touched on civic cause, but I'm conscious of time, so I will unshare if I can. I'm having technical difficulties, so I'll stop sharing there and hand back. Thank you, Bev.
Thank you, Liam. I'm sorry to put the pressure on everybody for time, but I am determined we're going to get one question at least to all the panelists. Lots in your presentation there. I'm sure people will be really interested in digesting that at their leisure. So thank you very much. Lastly, coming on to Claire Pearce, who is the Planning and Economic Development Director for Salamanca Group, and this is Gravity Limited. She is leading the Gravity Enterprise Zone, which is a 616-acre redundant site, otherwise known as a transformational opportunity, in the heart of the Southwest, down in Somerset. So she is working both on the international investment side and managing a year-long program of community engagement focused on a more cleaner, more inclusive approach. Claire, I hate to chop you off in your prime, and I wouldn't, but if you could be as brief as possible, that would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev, and good afternoon, everyone. I was expecting that, so I'm hastily rejigging my thoughts just to give a very brief update for you. I think it's really important that individuals from the Institute for Economic Development have a place leadership role. It's something that I've always felt very, very strongly about, and I've fulfilled a number of roles over the years. It made me feel very old, actually, over 30 years now in private and public sector, leading place-based projects or theme-based investment projects, whether that's transport or planning. So Gravity is my current challenge, but place leadership is still very much at the fore. So I see my role really as creating a compelling vision for the place that I can communicate to stakeholders and to the community. It is a transformational opportunity, and I think one of the challenges that we face as a profession is that some of these things take an awful long time. The economic development strategy that I wrote for Sedgemoor goes back to 2008. So I think James picked up on the point about managing expectations. I think that's really, really important, and we need to be able to communicate lead-in times and outcomes and give communities a chance to understand how long these things take and what the patterns of investment are and what the factors are to make that a success. So I'm working now on quite a fast programme of community engagement, which is driven very much by a local development order process with a hard deadline of November 2021. It's not ideal from a community engagement perspective, but the whole point of a local development order is to create a marketing tool to address our outcome, which is to attract international investment into the UK in a post-Brexit context. So Gravity is a destination for that inward investment. We're working really hard with stakeholders in the region and across borders, across local enterprise partnership areas, to build consensus and to work on initiatives like Freeport bids to build up that very strategic, big picture priority for what we might want to do in terms of strategic economic development. It's not easy at a strategic big picture level. And I think one of the challenges I have then is to try to also look at the local grassroots agenda and just picking some examples up maybe that haven't been mentioned so far, particularly in your presentation, James. I would mention jobs. I see really jobs being a key issue post-COVID. It's something that people are getting very, very concerned about in terms of what's going to happen next. And I think towns like Bridgewater, maybe they're not the most favourite towns. They're quite earthy, they're good working towns, but they've survived these kind of issues before and they've regenerated. And what we're looking at really is a fourth industrial revolution. We're looking at a new future beyond Hinkley Point C. So for me, it's about challenging the town, but also the people in terms of what comes next. So sustained job opportunities, new training opportunities, new sectors, and frankly, welcoming international investment to the town. The town used to be a global town, but it hasn't been of late. So making those challenges and bringing those new opportunities into the area, quite important. So in terms of some key sort of factors on the ground at the moment, we are bringing a team together and have brought a team together to really work hard on community engagement. Social, based out of Bristol, are working with us at a grassroots level in terms of community newsletters, websites, etc. We have a team called Bounce Forward, who are a charity that are going to be working with me on engaging young people from 3 years old upwards on a resilience programme, working with school children on how to build resilience and emotional skills for looking at change as they go through school and into the world of work. We'll also be working with Moby, George Clark's charity, to look at engaging young people in designing place. Traditional planning consultation processes tend not to attract young people, so we're trying to design in mechanisms where we can encourage the very young right the way through schools, colleges, and potentially into work experience roles as well, to get a whole community view rather than just the local community view, which tends to be of an older demographic. So we're trying to build that in from the outset. We're also going to be working with businesses to create a business leadership group, not just from the local area, from across the region, to build that consensus. That's also about change management. It has to look at the future. It can't be looking at business as usual. And of course, we'll be doing all of the normal things that Sedgemoor are very good at as well, in terms of local labour agreements, employment and skills plans. We'll have a business charter for local supply chain development, building on the lessons and the experience that the area has from Hinkley Point C. You know, that was a very, very big, still is a very large construction project, 25,000 full-time, but temporary jobs. So Gravity really needs to look at a future beyond Hinkley Point and look at jobs for those people that come out of that temporary construction project, and actually look at building a different kind of future for those communities. And just mentioning COVID, you know, COVID has been terrible, but it does give us particularly challenges on the ground right now. Of course, we've had to stop our community drop-in events. We've had to stop face-to-face contact. We have had to close our 37 Club, which is a bar for local people, but we've repurposed that for volunteering, and we're moving everything online. We'll be having virtual village hall sessions. We'll be having theme-based webinars. We'll be doing training with teachers. So it's a challenge for the team. It's a challenge for the community, but we still use the phone and we still put up leaflets in the local shop. And we have to remember that the community and the stakeholders are humans, and we have to keep the human factor in everything that we're doing. So my message really is to focus on the individual. And I think we're making sure that the project is accessible as possible, whether that's through a leaflet, a webinar, or a phone call. So thank you. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Claire. I'd just like to invite my panelists to show their faces. James, if it's all right with you, I think given the time, we have 2 minutes. What I'm going to do, instead of coming back to you for Q&As, because some of you have touched on many different aspects of this and have provided slides, is to ask the questions and then ask you if you wouldn't mind writing a couple of 100 words and sending them back to Sarah Lynn Challoner, and then we can digest your answers to the questions and circulate them out. So concatenating a couple that have come in on the Q&A, the first question is, rather than leaving it to the end, how can we get this community consultation and feedback at all stages of the life cycle of any given project? That's quite critical, I think. How can we better involve the communities that we're serving, particularly reaching across the digital divide? So obviously digital is a major part, and I'm so glad, Liam, you said you don't know what TikTok is, because I don't know either, so hurrah. So how do we reach across the digital divide, but also for the older populations for whom most digital stuff may be a complete mystery? Which community groups do you think are key to involving community or stakeholder groups? Because sometimes you can't reach everybody directly. So who have you found from a practical perspective are really useful in helping expand your reach and expand the level of feedback you have? And then just one from me, I was really interested in the feedback on James's report that said everybody's looking to the local council. It looked like more than twice as many people expected to come from the council rather than the LEPs. So that threw up an interesting question for me, is what should the LEPs be doing, if anything, or should they be working more through the local authority in terms of this communication and messaging and engagement stuff? So I hope that has captured the gist of the questions that have been asked. Anything practical that you would like to throw in, we will compile a short report of your perspectives and circulate it with the slides and the recording. So I apologize for my poor chairing, that we have had no time for debate, but obviously our panelists are very passionate about their subjects. So I'd like to thank James in particular for his report, and to Liam and Claire and Michelle and Claire Pearce for your contributions today. Absolutely fascinating. We've covered the whole of the UK in our panel, which has been great. And I promise you, we will circulate your expertise more widely to our audience. So thank you very much indeed for your time, and participants, thank you for joining us. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.